if we take let's just call it a basketball player, and you want to improve jump height, that's what you're asking me. How do we understand training from an internal level to allow that behavior to emerge?
Yes.
Well, let's look at it from a standard model level first, and then that might help us create some distinctions, and you guys can add whatever. So in my estimation, standard model might be, okay, well, jumping involves the act of hip flexion, knee bending, ankle plantar flexion, right? So like triple extension, let's call it, or flexion and then triple extension. So basically that from a standard model, that's going to involve some level of squatting. And that squatting is going to have to happen from, with a particular amount of load, let's call it. And so again, from the standard model, I would assume that most people would say, okay, well, we have to continually increase the amount that you squat so that you can somehow turn that into jumping. There might be some accessory lifting in there, calf raises or like some ankle plantar flexion type thing. There might be some variations of leg pressing and hamstring curling and leg extending and all these sort of things. You guys would probably agree with all this. Mm-hmm. And then we would immediately translate that into essentially jump training, right? Yeah. So first, let's make the distinction. That again, right now, is the blurring of strength and skill, because jumping essentially is a skill of basketball, correct? So it is a skill that most basketball players will have. Some will be able to display that skill externally better than others. Some will be able to have higher amounts of jumping compared to others. But essentially, jumping is a skill, meaning there's like a technique to it. There is some learning involved with it, so on and so forth. So what we would do is we would say, okay, well, first of all, we have to understand the movement required to improve the jumping of skill, the skill of jumping. What joints are involved? We would say there are ankle joints involved, there are hip joints involved, there are knee joints involved. Probably you could take that up into the spine and even the shoulders to use the arms and so on and so forth. And we would want to know what the standard, what this athlete has in terms of the standard of what their current ability to use those joints is. And we would use CARS analysis for that, to understand where they might be able to move into very well, maybe where they can't move into very well. And so we would get an understanding of how they're able to use hips, knees, and ankles relative to, space, but also relative to the act of jumping, which is a skill. You guys are with me up to this point, correct? Then we would also have to understand, okay, so what are the behavioral qualities of strength that would allow someone to improve the skill of jumping? Well, there is going to be an absolute strength requirement for sure, and that's going to be relative to the athlete and their body weight. Agreed?
Agreed.
So I don't know exactly what that is, but we would have to, do some analysis on, how much that would be. So, there would be a component of external training for absolute strength in a squat, for example. But for us, we would take it even deeper and we would say, well, if there is not enough ability to use the joint effectively for that skill, that is a trainable quality. So, we call that workspace, which, if there's not enough workspace or usable workspace within a zone required of that joint to do a skill, well, that is a trainable quality for us. So if that was the case where this didn't exist, we could train for that. And for us, that would be training for capsular space.